Thanks, Jerry. It's a real pleasure to be back and to share the story of Trigg mining with you. As mineral explorers and miners, we've historically searched for deposits that will be developed by underground mines or open pits. Mostly in the room, we're hard rock miners. We exploit these deposits by drilling, blasting, crushing and processing, consuming large quantities of electricity and chemicals to liberate the minerals. So imagine finding economic minerals already dissolved in solution in such great quantities that the first stage projects will often last more than 20 years. Imagine not needing to blast, crush, grind, or leave permanent changes to the landscape with open pits, waste dumps and tailings dams. Imagine now being able to harvest solar energy without building a solar energy power plant and organically producing minerals that are essential for all living things. Brine-hosted sulphate of potash is sustainable mining. At Trigg Mining, we're helping to secure the world's most nutritious food sources by exploring and developing long-life, low-cost, primary sources of organic sulphate of potash. Just 7 months ago, we started the company by farming into 2 exploration tenements, one at Lake Raisin and the other at Lake Throstle. Both projects not very far from others, such as Tropicana, which is 60 kilometres south of Lake Raisin, and Gruyere to the south of Lake Throstle. Since then, in that 7 months since starting that earn-in, we've expanded the tenure to 2,688 square kilometres, including 400 square kilometres of Salt Lake Playa and 265 kilometres of paleo channels. As you and I know, probably even up to about 10 years ago, if you had an exploration project out the back of Laverton, you thought you were on your own out there. Well, it's really very different environment now. We have got so much infrastructure and busy neighbours with 2 gas pipelines passing through our tenements, one going to Tropicana, the other going to Gruyere. We have roads, tracks and all the infrastructure available to access these projects. And we have 3 airports within 60 kilometres of each tenement. Laverton Links, shown in blue, starts from just 35 kilometres from Laverton. And at Lake Throstle, it sits on the Great Central Road, which the state government is spending $100 million to upgrade, this shortcut through to Queensland, opening up new trade routes. So all this makes Trigg Mining sulphate of potash projects the best located West Australian SOP projects in terms of infrastructure. At Laverton Links, we have Lake Raisin, which is granted, Lake Hope Campbell, which will be granted by the end of the month, and East Laverton, which we applied for in January, and with no native title across any of those prospects, we anticipate that they'll all be granted by later in 2018. Lake Throstle lies in the Nuttingara Native Title Determination Area, and we're negotiating quite well at the moment with the Council on an exploration access agreement. So we're pretty hopeful that by end of Q3 this year, all those tenements will be granted. Now, I don't have geology slides, being a mining engineer, but I will just talk about what it is that we're looking for, because it's not like a gold project where we're targeting one part of a structure. We're targeting the whole structure as our exploration target. So these outlines follow the paleo channel, and that's what I'm referring to as 265 kilometres of water resource. The mineralisation is in old riverbeds, saturated through to the surface in the salt lakes and just below the surface where it's not. So the whole resource goes along the length of those 2 tenements. So what have we been up to in the last 7 months? Well, it has been an incredibly busy time. So the earn-in agreement we negotiated was to spend $800,000 on the tenements and the expanded tenement footprint to earn 80% and convert the remaining 20% into Trigg on IPO. Now, to put it into perspective, BC Iron negotiated an earn-in on a similar project last year, and they're spending $10.5 million to earn 50% of a slightly smaller footprint. We've been in the field straight away. We've carried out geophysics surveys, the first drilling program at Lake Raisin, and identified an exploration target representing just 15% of the tenure. At Hope Campbell, we've identified mineralisation there as well, and that covers now half of our tenure. We already know we've got SOP. Corporately, just yesterday we had a shareholders meeting to convert the company through to public in anticipation of IPOing in a few months. And we want to do that now so that we can optimise this field season, because we want to build on this momentum that we're building at Trigg. So what is Trigg? Well, we all know Trigg the beach. The company's not named after the beach. The company's in fact named after Henry Trigg, who is one of my ancestors who arrived here in Perth in 1829 and was instrumental in establishing the first infrastructure. Trigg Island and Trigg suburb is named after him, and we've named the company in honour of his pioneering spirit. The board is also made up of 3 former managing directors, including myself, who, as Jerry said, we've got a lot of experience across doing IPOs, discovery, project development, project financing and raising equity. We also have one of the most experienced hydrogeologists searching for sulphate of potash in the goldfields, Matthew Panton, who has had to teach me about getting excited about water bursting out of the cyclone. Because as hard rock miners, we want dry samples, but in water miners, which is what Trigg is going to be about, it's all about water and discovering water, hypersaline water in very large quantities. So what is sulphate of potash that has been recently discovered in the hypersaline brines of the northern goldfields? Sulphate of potash, or potassium sulphate, is an essential fertiliser for high-value chloride-sensitive food crops, such as your morning espresso or smashed avocado. Potassium is essential for all living things. It is present in every living cell. As humans, we need nearly 5,000 milligrams every day, and we source that from our food. The food, in turn, sources it from the soil, and much of our farm soil is depleted, so it sources it from fertiliser. And it's needed for proper plant growth, shelf life and drought resistance. The other part of the product, sulphur, is needed to form chlorophyll, plant proteins, and increases crop yield and produces quality fruit and vegetables. So this is one of the cleanest sources of essential nutrients for plant growth. There is no waste product. Both the potassium and the sulphate get taken up by the plant. The alternative, which is the majority of the potash market, is muriate of potash. It's potassium chloride. It's cheaper and more abundant, but it contains nearly 50% chloride. And this is not very good for plants. It's salt. It gets left behind in the soil. The plants don't want it. And we pray to the rain gods to flush it out through the waterways, which means, especially in arid climates, it increases the salinity of the soil and those waterways. So from a demand perspective, this is relying on the population of the world to continue to grow. And that population is continuing to demand better quality fruit and vegetables. And as we increase our population, we're building houses on the arable land, reducing the area of arable land, meaning that we need to get a lot smarter about producing our food, more intensively, requiring more fertiliser. So in this kind of product, in this market, we're not relying on dramatic changes in human behaviour, like that of the battery minerals. Rather, we're relying on people doing what they always do, and that's eat and make babies. It's also an incredibly steady price environment. So we're not chasing a price bubble. It is a niche product that makes up about 10% of the market. And for the last 8 years, it has remained in the same price banner of between $450 and $600 a tonne. It is also premiumly priced over MOP or muriate of potash, and that has only expanded in recent years. So we're not racing to market to beat the price drop. These are long-life, low-cost sources of organic sulphate of potash to feed the world at a sustained profit margin. And from a project economics point of view, these projects, being primary sources of SOP, automatically come in at the lower end of the cost curve. We compete in the other half of the market with a process called Mannheim, where MOP, muriate of potash, or KCl, is put into autoclaves with sulphuric acid with a lot of energy consumption, pressure, temperature, to produce the SOP with a byproduct, and that byproduct is hydrochloric acid. 1.2 tonnes of hydrochloric acid is produced for every tonne of SOP in that process, which makes it very expensive and very capital intensive. So without the need to drive operational costs through scale of infrastructure costing billions of dollars, Salt Lake brine SOPs reside at the lower end of the cost curve, making this sustainable throughout the operating mine lives. So back to Trigg, and what are we planning to do? Well, we want to build on that momentum that we've built up in the last 7 months. The next project to drill will be Lake Hope Campbell, where we already know we've got SOP mineralisation. The first step there will be to do the gravity survey when the tenement is granted, and the first drilling program to identify what we hope to be at least an exploration target along 95 kilometres of paleochannel. Lake Raisin, which already has an exploration target, will continue to drill that and increase the confidence in the mineral resource, and can continue to do the evaporation trials that we've already started. East Laverton is our newest project. We'll be doing reconnaissance and ground gravity and seismic surveys on that to define the paleochannel. And at Lakes Russell, we'll continue the native title negotiations and get on the ground with the heritage clearances. So to put this in scale perspective, if we overlay the tenements, which hug the paleochannels and the lakes, the 2,688 square kilometres dwarfs Perth. We can go from Mindarie down to Preston Beach, out to Boddington, back to Perth and out through to Chidlow. And this is the scale of these water resources out there. We've drilled Lake Raisin and we've identified an exploration target of 2.6 to 9.3 million tonnes, which represents just 15% of our projects. And we really think we've only just touched the tip of the iceberg. Lake Hope Campbell is the next one, and that will take our projects to 45%, where we know we've got mineralisation, and building this story up as we go. We've been in business 7 months. We are the only private company on the agenda at this conference, and we will be going to IPO in a few months. So in summary, we have really strong global market and demand fundamentals. Western Australia is one of the low-risk jurisdictions. Brine SOP is the only organic source of SOP needed for food production. We have a really large land holding now in the same district, and we'll have 100% ownership of that on IPO. We're incredibly well supported with infrastructure, and we're going to have lots of flexible production options. We've got 400 square kilometres of lake where we can put trenches on lake evaporation ponds, minimising the environmental footprint that we'll have, and lots of paleochannel to pump from. The initial exploration target represents just 15% of the total tenure. This is a project of scale, and you've got a really enthusiastic production team that wants to see this come into production. Thank you.